Hey everybody, it's Everett with Ohio for Freedom. I'm at Faith Lawn Cemetery in Erlanger, Kentucky, and here's the reason why. I think it was the last Friday of January is when we released the Rod Parsley Naked, Not Ashamed video. A lot of people have seen that video. It's an hour and 44 minutes long, so I thought it'd be good to maybe split it up. And so some of the information, in case somebody didn't have enough time to watch the end, they'd be able to. This is basically the last third of that video that includes the trip to the Warfield cemetery, which is where the Parsley clan is from, and some of them are buried there. Now, at the beginning of the video, posited the idea of what would be the cause, or at least a contributing factor, to the nasty, horrible, naked behavior of the Parsleys, but especially Rod Parsley. One of the and there were three things: Freemasonry, Appalachian superstition and witchcraft, and generational sin and iniquity. And we showed you, and if you get to the end of the video, you will see that in little bitty Warfield, there's maybe like a couple hundred people, 300 people. They do have a Masonic lodge. But in the cemetery itself, there's a lot of Freemasonry and Masonic tombstones. And then also, we showed you, and if you haven't seen it, we will show you Rod Parsley's great big Masonic tombstone. He's not under there yet. Maybe he can repent before he is and tear it down, smash it up, get it out of there. Where he's got quotations of himself on his own tombstone. That's weird. But after we shot the video, this information was sent to me. So this is the tomb, or the grave, of Carlos Parsley. And Carlos Parsley was the first cousin of Rod Parsley's grandpa. Rod Parsley's grandpa, I think he was John Wesley Parsley or something like that. But anyway, we'll show you on the screen. But I want you to see that right there. We'll get the camera real close. That is the emblem for a 32nd degree Mason. So we do know that Rod Parsley's grandpa had a cousin that was a 32nd degree Masonry. It doesn't prove that Rod Parsley's grandpa was a Mason, but it does show that there was really close family association, and in all likelihood, somewhere in Rod Parsley's immediate bloodline, somebody would have been a Mason. If his mother might have been Eastern Star, I don't know if Ellen was or not. She never renounced the Appalachian witchcraft. Don't want to get lost in all of that. But it just makes you wonder, with all this is going on, how much of our Pentecostal pioneers had all this stuff in their life, and we have no control over what Grandpa did or Grandma did, but we can take control over what God is. We can renounce. And so, did Rod Parsley ever do any research that he ever renounced the Masonic influences? Because some of these oaths, the oaths, folks, lay claim to your future issue, and it's just spiritually, it's not. And so, how many of well-known preachers and ministries have had these influences, which are demonic, that they never broke off? Maybe they were never even aware of them, but have had a major influence in their life, a major influence in their ministry, and the people that have touched. Let's get into the video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side. When the interview was over, I knew that we had captured something pretty historic. Nationally known, even worldwide evangelist engaging in these kind of behaviors, and the testimony coming from an actual eyewitness with 1,000% credibility. Yeah, unfortunately, this has got to be shared. So I sent a clip to 3 podcaster friends of mine: Jason Rimbert of Moments of Truth, Robin Torgrimson of Mega Maniacs, and Pastor Mike Mahurin of Refiner's Fire. I told them, please be watching for my call, because I will want to get your reaction. Now, I had told, and in fact promised Garrett, that we would go to the Warfield cemetery after the interview. And he had promised me that it would be well worth it, and it was. We learned and confirmed way more than I expected. So after the interview was over, we packed up the gear, Garrett did the driving, and I made some phone calls. Yep, there you go.
Hey, bro.
Hey, Brother Jason, sorry to bug you. I only got a minute, though. Listen, can I get your quick reaction to that clip that I sent you?
With the guy in Rod Parsley?
Yes, sir.
Man, let me tell you something, bro. That right there was the most sickening thing I ever heard. My stomach literally turned. And I have to say this, to me, it looked like a grooming process. Like, and I don't throw the word sexual assault around loosely, but that's like a mental sexual assault that he did on that gentleman. Because one's supposed to be his pastor, two, supposed to be his employer, and for you to strip down, he starts raging naked in front of this person, trying to have a conversation, knowing that he's uncomfortable, but you're forcing him to participate in this conversation with you anyway. To me, that shows that you're grooming him for something else.
Yeah. And like I said, we're on the way to a graveyard here, but look, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really, really, really strange, put a number on it for me.
Bro, I couldn't. This is above 10. I got to give it a 25.
And then last thing, Brother Jason, you've been around. You've been to camps, conventions. You've been around ministry a lot. How many naked preachers have you seen in your life?
I've never seen that one.
Well, let's keep it that way. I'll keep you posted. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, talk to you.
Hello.
Brother, I've only got a minute, but can you give me your best pastor's reaction to what was on that clip?
All right, so it's very bizarre. I've heard of other families that do stuff like that, but the bottom line for me, being a worldwide television evangelist and pastor of a mega church, to me, this has gone beyond spiritually weird to being, I think, mentally, something's wrong with him mentally, is my opinion. I mean, just his outburst, his behavior in front of family, in front of strangers, and just to watch him even on the platform preaching, to me, he's got some kind of mental instabilities somehow. It's beyond arrogancy to me. It's just something wrong with him. That's my opinion.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts. Hey, Robin, we are on the way to the Warfield cemetary, so I got just a minute, but I had to get your reaction to the video link that I sent you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Everett, I have to say I'm shocked, but I'm not shocked. So, and I say that because, you know, in seeing and hearing what Garrett had to say, it takes you back even to the moment, I feel like, where he was in that room and first had these interactions, and in imagining how would you respond if you were put into that situation. But also, you know, for the last 6 or 7 months, I've been talking to people that have been sharing similar stories, and I have to tell you, even when I heard a similar story the first time, I was trying to justify it, or like, did that really happen? Not that I didn't believe them, but it's so shocking that someone, especially a pastor, would think that it's appropriate to walk around in front of people naked.
Well, he was there. This is on audio, video, the testimony. Yeah. Robin, I appreciate it. Hey, I will let you know how things go at the graveyard. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just before we reached Warfield, we came across an unexpected piece of confirmation. Everett Road. Not kidding you.
Garrett, I assure you, I do not own this road. But when we rode out here the first time, it sure felt prophetic that, like, we were at the right place at the right time.
Absolutely.
There you have it, folks. Okay.
There it is. Yep, that was good.
It took about a minute, okay, maybe two, to drive through Warfield. On the other side of Warfield, we found the little 2-track that goes up the hill to the Warfield Cemetery. It's about 4 feet wide. It was covered with snow. Garrett didn't seem too concerned in the Ram 2500 diesel with the 4-wheel drive. Now, we're going to take you to the graveyard and Garrett's remarks from the graveyard in just a moment. But you've heard from 3 podcasters, 2 of whom happen to be preachers. But I wanted to hear from a forensic psychologist, a forensic counselor, to weigh in on these bizarre behaviors. Debbie Linhart. That's a name that'll be familiar to pretty much everyone who read the first Julie Roy's article dealing with Jonathan Lamb, Susie Lamb, Baby Lamb, and the whole Daystar fiasco. Debbie Linhart is the forensic counselor that did not exonerate Pete because Pete did not cooperate. Well, as the Lord would have it, Debbie Linhart reached out to me through Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson on a completely unrelated matter, and yes, being a little bit opportunistic, I asked if she would please weigh in on these behaviors. Debbie was very generous and gracious with her time. We spoke for at least a half an hour. That'll be posted sometime in the future, but here are a few of the most salient remarks from that telephone conversation. All I know is, to me, it's extremely bizarre and wicked. But, like, clinically, how would you classify that?
Clinically, I would classify that as what's called a cluster B personality disorder.
Okay.
And there are several personality disorders that land under that classification or category.
Right.
And among those are what we call a narcissistic personality disorder or a histrionic personality disorder.
Okay.
And both of those have certain characteristics that someone would have to demonstrate or show to be put into that classification.
Gotcha. And are those ever, like, blended, or is somebody, like, they're going to be this or they're going to be that, or do they ever overlap or blend, or how does that work?
Yes, they can. Sometimes it's possible to have more than one type or a mixed combination of those types, which would really land it in what we would call other specified personality disorder.
Prophetically, the people of what's coming, if they don't...
This is a little more difficult or just unnerving. In his testimony, you have, in this case, Rod Parsley's 18-year-old daughter in the same room while he's parading himself around naked and actually taking a bath with her sitting 2 feet away on the toilet. Is that abuse to this 18-year-old daughter?
Because of the age, I don't think you could classify that as abuse. But what I would say is that being 18, technically she was an adult and could have walked away.
Yes.
However, you have to look at how the culture that she was raised in.
Yes.
This is something that happened in her family from the time that she was a young child.
Right.
Aware of that, of sexual differences.
Yeah.
You certainly could say it was inappropriate, and she may have been acculturated in that environment, so that 18, she wouldn't think anything about it, because for her, that was normalized.
You better
The
talk to
Bible
those
calls
preachers
you,
out there.
the Bible calls you a reprobate.
Prophesy, prophet.
It is definitely a form of sexual harassment.
Yes.
Because anytime you're under a person, like an employee of a person,
Yes, ma'am.
they do something that is inappropriate, sexual, then it would certainly land in the category of harassment
Okay.
and be dealt with under the law in that category.
Okay.
Prophetically, the people of what's coming if they don't get back in right standing with God.
And what is there a simple definition for paraphilic?
It's just a classification of all of the different types of sexual disorders. It includes things like an exhibitionist disorder,
Right.
or voyeurism, which would be really watching someone else.
Yes.
It also includes things like sexual sadism or a pedophilic disorder, which of course has to do with children.
You better
The
talk to
Bible
those
calls
preachers
you,
out there.
the Bible calls you a reprobate.
Prophesy, prophet.
Wouldn't this almost invariably be a behavior that started when she was a little girl?
I would suspect that it was. There are across our nation, unfortunately, a lot of family cultures that accept this as normal behavior, although to the vast majority of us, it isn't.
And for those families that this is normal, is that like a generational or a multi-generational thing usually, or sometimes, or?
Yes, in most cases, it goes back many generations. And even part of that has to do with geographical differences. For most Americans, that would be considered strange behavior.
Well, for this American, it is. This is actually the first Masonic tombstone that I ever saw, that I knew that's what I saw. So you can see the G with the compass and square, and then the upside down pentagram, and then you see the little 3 loops, chain loops in the middle, and those 2 symbols on either side probably mean something as well. And then I also noticed this. This seems to be a popular name around here, but that last name Kirk, there's something to that name, but we'll find out sooner or later. Probably sooner than later. So if you look close, you'll see the Masonic emblem on both sides of the name, but that's not the only one. Well, Garrett, you came up here a while back and you found some stuff.
Yeah, 6 or 8 weeks ago, I was in the area.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to come over here since I knew this family, worked for this family, and pay my respects to James and Ellen. And when I got here, I was very surprised at what I found. So let's
see. Yeah, let's see what you found.
Being from this area, I live approximately an hour from here. I knew that the Parsleys were from Martin County, Warfield area. A little research. I found the location where James and Ellen are buried. And like I said, I wanted to pay my respects. Because recently I had a renewal in my life of putting away the resentment of 15 years once
Right.
leaving that ministry in 2009. And as I mentioned earlier, I was in shock at what I found here, Everett. If you can see behind me, Parsley Endicott Monument.
Wow.
And I immediately noticed that cross. I think that's the logo, official logo of Breakthrough Ministries.
So on the monument, he's got the Breakthrough logo.
Yes.
And then below that, what is that?
Yeah, this is a lot more to it. We have not only Psalm 62, verses 5 and 6, but we have some quotes that if you've been around the ministry, Word Harvest Church, or heard Parsley preach, I'm almost certain you've probably heard this quote at the bottom.
Yeah. He's quoting himself on his own tombstone.
Right.
Who does that? Who quotes themselves on their own tombstone?
Well, this is a lot, Everett, but what speaks to me more than seeing this quote, and you probably barely can see Dr. Rod Parsley at the bottom,
Yeah.
is I see the Masonic symbols.
Well, yeah, you've got the two columns.
You've got the two columns. One
got-
is for Boaz and Jachin.
Yep.
I think
Jachin's on one side, Boaz is on the other.
I can't remember left and right. One means strength. I think the other one means certainty.
And then he's got the Solomon's Temple roof.
We got the Solomon's Temple, and you can imagine just putting the eye right here.
Yeah.
That has a lot of Masonic meaning.
So this is a Freemasonry tombstone,
I think so.
monument, whether anybody realizes it or not.
Yeah, I think so. You could say this is the wisdom of Rod Parsley, the doorway, the wisdom of Solomon, and his temple, right here in Warfield.
And I also noticed on Ellen's stone, she passed away, didn't she?
As far as I know.
Well, she doesn't have an end date.
I think she passed in 2018, but it's definitely
So
not
what does
there.
that mean?
I'm assuming she's here.
Yeah.
This is Debbie, which is the...
Garrett, if Rod was here right now, what would you say to him?
I would ask him the question, why? Why, Rod? What is up with all of the occultic symbols? I was part of your ministry for 2 years as a student and as an employee of World Harvest Church. I was briefly your personal assistant for just a matter of months. And I left that place hurt, spiritually hurt, and damaged. And I'm here on your family's cemetery here in Martin County to ask you why. Why does it go on? What are you a part of? It's easy to see the occultic symbolism of Solomon's Temple here that has your signature, your name on it, has the breakthrough cross on it. I'm here beside of Ellen Parsley, where she lays to rest. I'm here on what could be your spot. You're 68 years old now. You just celebrated a birthday. How many more birthdays do you have? Please consider my words. I was damaged there at your ministry. I came into that place on fire for God and left confused, damaged. I seen parts of you that I didn't ask to see. I seen behavior from you that was very ungodly. I seen methods and a system of business that I can't say was godly. Money was above the word. Money was above the care and attention to making disciples and seeing the love of God and the love of people. Rod, is there something in your family that's from these hills that I'm also from, that has some type of witchcraft, occultic background that you carry even to this day? It's time to let it go. Your days are far spent. And like I stand here with Ellen, maybe in just so many years I can come back to this same spot and I can find you. But it doesn't have to be that way. Your time can be changed. You gotta repent, brother. There's too much that's went on that only you can change, and God will help you, and I pray that you do.
Hearing Garrett utter these words of grace, truth, and love with a quiet strength, it was hard to imagine that a year and a half earlier, Garrett had suffered heart failure that his doctors could not explain, which led to a stroke, which led to the prognosis that he would likely need a pacemaker installed while he was still in his 40s. Debbie Linhart explained in our phone conversation that, yes, will be published at a later date, that absolutely the stress from unresolved spiritual trauma and abuse can be a major contributing factor in this type of health crisis. Garrett got a second opinion, and he is of the opinion that God has given him a second chance at a happy and fulfilling life. The Lord led Garrett to this graveyard a month before he practically drug me there to see the Freemasonry and the narcissism on permanent display as part of Rod's legacy. And it was the Lord who led him to plead with Rod to repent and to reach out to victims to give their hurt and past trauma to God. I got just a couple more questions, and I had shown you, I believe I texted you a picture of a couple of tombstones, and we had talked earlier. Ellen Parsley has on her tombstone her death date, or her birth year of 1935, but even though she passed away like 7 years ago now, there's no death year on her tombstone, but there is on her husband's. Have you ever seen that before? And I'll just say, I think Rod Parsley can afford to have somebody etch in, 2018. I don't think money is the issue. If it is, then we'll take an offering for him so he can have that done. But have you seen that before?
I have heard about it being done for a variety of reasons, but I haven't personally witnessed that.
Okay.
I will tell you, though, that some groups that I have talked with and worked with in the past, especially in West Virginia and Kentucky, that was sometimes, I've been told that was done essentially so that the person remained present with them, even though they were deceased.
And this is something like this belief, or this is something that you've encountered working with groups or individuals from the Kentucky, West Virginia area.
Yes.
So we don't know if that's what's going on, but if that is what's going on, it wouldn't be the first time that you've ever heard of that.
Right.
On the way back from Warfield Cemetery, I still had one person on my call list, and that was my good friend Marianne Ray from Truth Be Told podcast.
Marianne, when we did that episode way back in August of 2024 about the Lester Summerall Freemason sword ceremony, and then you and I did a follow-up with the aerial images of World Harvest Church and all those Masonic shapes. If you remember, I told you, even back then, I felt that if we could ever get to Martin County, Kentucky, we get some more information. I gotta tell you, I sent you the picture of the tombstone, but I've been to Warfield, and they got an IGA, and they got a gas station, and I think a Family Dollar. That's about it. But one thing they do have is Warfield has its own Masonic lodge.
Wow. in the middle of nowhere.
Hey, at least they got their priorities straight, right? Well, listen, I got to jump off here in just a minute, but I had to get your reaction to the Parsley Endicott tombstone. What do you make of that?
Well, my first reaction was it looks like a picture of the front of Solomon's temple. But if you connect the dots with what we do know and what we have discovered in terms of the symbology all over the church, on top of the church, from an aerial view within the church with all the swords and the symbolism, clearly to me that just shouts masonry, Freemasonry, with the columns on the right and the left, and the top of it looks like the capstone or the roof of Solomon's temple.
Right.
It's very creepy to me. And the fact that they chose these columns that smack of masonry and just connecting all these dots, I'm like, something here is dark, really dark.
Yeah, the columns, Garrett pointed out, are like Jachin and Boaz is clearly Masonic, and then the Solomon's Temple. Give me a quick reaction, and then I gotta scoot. He's got his breakthrough logo at the top of that tombstone, and then he quotes himself at the bottom. What is that?
Yeah, I don't understand that either. But that right there just speaks of, all the glory to Rod, not God.
On the way down to Prestonburg, I was pretty confident that we would record the interview that would document these bizarre, horrible behaviors by Rod Parsley. I also mused, if you'll recall, about what could be the things that contribute to these behaviors. And there were three. There was Freemasonry. There was Appalachian superstitious witchcraft. There was generational iniquity. Well, the Freemasonry part, I think that's pretty easy to see. Now, there will be a lot more to say about that in future episodes, but I think we've demonstrated that. As far as the Appalachian superstition, well, there'll be more to say about that as well. But for right now, why isn't there a death date or a death year on Ellen Parsley's tombstone? You heard the words from Debbie Linhart. So is Ellen living on through Rod? And if so, that's a West Virginia, Kentucky, Appalachian phenomenon. Why isn't there a death year on Ellen Parsley's tombstone? And then thirdly, generational iniquity. Well, there's going to be more, unfortunately, that comes out about that. But for now, just do a little research and look into the lawsuit, the sexual harassment lawsuit that was brought by Rod Parsley's aunt, his mother's sister, against Rod Parsley's father. And yes, there will be more. In Acts chapter 19, verse 18, it tells us that many who believed, they were believers, many who believed came forward and they confessed their deeds. They confessed things that they hadn't dealt with. They confessed their deeds. And many that practiced curious arts, that'd be the occult, that'd be things like Freemasonry, and they brought the books and they burned them. And somebody did a calculation because they said that the value would have been about 50,000 drachmas. Sounds like a lot of money. But here's the principle that you see. You had believers, and this is New Testament, this is Acts chapter 19. You have believers that had not yet renounced these curious deeds and these things of darkness. But when they saw the demonstration and the moving and the power of God and the sons of Sceva and all the rest, they knew they had to. They knew they had to leave the old pagan ways behind and put them under the blood. They had to renounce them to move on in a new life with Christ. So I just want to close by speaking to 3 different groups or individuals. First of all, Rod, the clock's ticking, brother. The clock is ticking. Now, I don't know if you have all this Freemasonry involvement because you're unaware of it. Certainly, if you've even looked into your history and the surroundings that you talk about, Warfield and Martin County, certainly you would know those influences were there. Or have you made some kind of deal? Do you actively practice Freemasonry? But I've not been able to find any of all the materials that you have where you teach people how to renounce the occultism and the Freemasonry that seems so pervasive in your ministry. The clock is ticking. And Rod, also, the generational iniquity, it's not your fault, the way that you were brought up. But at some point, we have to take responsibility. Maybe you need to go to your daughter and you need to beg her forgiveness for what she's been exposed to. But Rod, I just got to tell you, you recently posted saying, or in a sermon, that you repented to your cousin that you yelled at or spoke to in an unkind manner. Well, that was good, because if that actually happened, you need to. But why haven't you ever asked forgiveness from Garrett May, the one that you repeatedly paraded your nakedness and your exhibitionism in front of? You damaged that young man, but I got good news. He's free, and he's not under the bondage of that anymore. But why haven't you reached out to him? Why haven't you reached out to others that have been similarly damaged? Rod, the clock is ticking. And the second group of people are all the people that'll line up, that'll want to defend this behavior. Here, I got a question for you. Were you and Rod hanging around naked together? Is that why you keep your mouth shut? Or will you really find another reason to defend and justify this type of behavior, which has been well documented? And then finally, to victims. The Lord is purging His church. The Lord is cleansing, I'll say cleansing His temple. What you've been hurt by, what had sometimes a horrific effect on your life. Garrett was lost, locked away in some kind of a prison, mentally and spiritually. Couldn't reconcile his World Harvest experience with his love of God. For 15 years he was in that place. But when he reached out to Jesus, when he called upon the Lord, just like that, he was welcomed back to a God that had never left him. And so, if you're a victim, let it start right now. Do what Debbie said. Reach out, get some help. And you can always email us at ohioforfreedom@gmail.com. You can always call us. We'll probably text back the first time, but we'll take your call, 513-620-5754. So until next time, God bless you. God bless your family. God bless the state of Ohio, and God bless the United States of America.
I hear the sweet sound of freedom, and I won't